Hello and welcome to our Cool Planet Masterclass on Demystifying CSRD. I'm Ben Churchill, Chief Strategy Officer for Cool Planet. I'm joined here by Ingrid.
Hi, I'm Ingrid Donker, Head of Research and Innovation at Future Planet. I'm delighted to be here with you, Ben, today.
Great to be here. Now, CSRD's been a topic that's been on everybody's lips for, at least 12 months now, and it's starting to become real. Perhaps you could maybe explain a little bit more of what it's all about.
Yeah, and it has to become real because between now and the end of 2028, the majority of companies in Europe and also abroad will have to comply with some disclosures that the EU Commission has agreed. It's not only in the EU, obviously the States is doing their own thing with the IFRS and the SEC, but we're focusing on CSRD today. And CSRD really when it came about, it's about EU telling companies to eliminate greenwashing and to be transparent. It's all about transparency. There's a few key words in the CSRD, I think, that everybody should just, if nothing else, if you don't retain anything else of today, it's really about the terminology. So transparency is key, and it's not only transparency of what you do in relation to the environment, in relation to social or governance in your business, but also in your supply chain and in your customers. And then due diligence. We need to show it. It's all about evidence. Companies cannot say anymore that they do stuff. They have to show how they are changing their business model, how they change their relationship with suppliers, with their customers, to actually embed sustainability. And that's what I believe, that's my interpretation of CSRD and what the EU wants to do. You have another, the double materiality, and we can go into it later a little bit, or the value chain, again, really big concept, and what does that mean for companies? And while CSRD is, for the bigger organization, 250 plus employees and 50 million turnover, it's going to impact everybody. It's going to impact all the SMEs as well, even though they're not listed. But there's about 24 million SMEs in Europe, and the majority of them are still, trading with and selling to bigger organizations who do have these directives, who do have to disclose to their requirements. So there's going to be some trickle effect there.
I think that's an important point, that even if you're a small company and don't get caught by the directive itself, inevitably you're in somebody else's supply chain somewhere, or value chain somewhere, so it's going to impact on you. So we're going to run right back to the basics. So CSRD, what does it even stand for?
CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive.
Yeah.
So it's about reporting.
Yeah.
Right? So in essence, it's about show us what you do. Don't talk about it, show us the evidence. We have another legislation coming down the track, which is a CS3D or the CSDDD, right? We might talk about it another time, but that's about the due diligence, and that has everything to do with the human rights in the value chain. So again, the EU taxonomy is another EU directive. We have the SFDR, so many acronyms. And so it's so difficult to stay on top of it all for any organization, big or small.
So talking of lots of acronyms, I've heard the term ESRS. Can you explain to us a little bit what that is?
Yeah, so while the CSRD is the directive, so it's a legal text of about 283 pages, the ESRSs are actually the standards, so the European Reporting Sustainability Standard, and so there's 12 of them. 2, ESRS 1 and 2, are cross-cutting, and these are mandatory. So the disclosures, what the EU has set out underneath these disclosures, they're mandatory to report on. One of those disclosures is the double materiality, which will then decide, once you do that exercise, which will then decide which of the other 10 standards, ESRSs, will become material or are material to report on.
Okay, so can I just get my head around
12.
this? So just getting my head around this. So the first part of ESRS is a double materiality, which says these things are material to whichever business you are, and then that identifies where to focus on for the next stage. Is that right?
That's correct. And where you need to focus on to disclose the information. And when EFRAG developed these standards for the EU Commission, when they had presented it, double materiality was important, i.e. you need to review your risk, your opportunities, the financial risks and opportunities in your business, but also the impact that your business has on society and the environment. You need to review that. But after the EU Commission accepted the text, they made double materiality even more important, because everybody needs to do it. It's an annual process. So combined with your reporting period, you need to do a double materiality assessment, and it can be a refresh or a completely new one.
Okay, so just stopping there, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
So double materiality is mandatory, and it's annual.
An annual refresh review.
But it has to be at least done or reviewed annually. And the double materiality part of that is it's the financial effect on you and your effect on the outside world. Is that essentially?
Yeah, and to make it really, it clicks with me when we say it's the inside out perspective. So what do, we as a company, on the environment and society? That's the impact perspective. So what's our impact on the environment and the people around us? And the financial impact is, what are the risks and opportunities from climate change? What are we seeing in climate change that is a risk to us? It might be, the temperature increasing, it might be water shortage, it might be pollution. Or what is the opportunity? And when a company considers that as part of their strategic planning and as their strategy, then you will see a lot more investments coming to the fore that will either deal with it, mitigate it, or adapt it.
I think that's a really important point. A lot of people talk about risks and devastation and how climate change is having, and it certainly is having those impacts. But there's also that opportunity piece. How can you position yourself in your market to be better and more sustainable, but actually do that in a way that's economically not just viable, but accretive? Now, just on that then, so as an organisation then, if you're looking at complying to CSRD, it sounds to be that double materiality is very much the first place you start.
Very much so, yeah, very much. And again, it's a process. You need to evidence that process, so that due diligence needs to be shown. You need to look at from an inside in and from an inside out perspective, outside in. The key term here as well is the stakeholders. So you have internal stakeholders, and so it can be your CEO, it can be your financial controller, your employees, but they're also external stakeholders. I mean, they also live in society. But what you also need to do now, the external stakeholders, is you need to get the voice and the opinion and the insights of your suppliers, your partners, your customers, industry networks. So it really is a horizon scan of who do we impact when we change our direction. Who do we impact, and is it a positive impact or a negative impact? And is it actual or potential? And is it short-term, medium, long-term? There's so many different variations of how that scan needs to be done. But ultimately, it's about an organization, a company needs to become very aware and very knowledgeable and evidence what the impact is of their operations on the environment and the people, and what actually we can do, how we can adapt ourselves to make it a good change. Like everybody's talking about risk, and we all see the weather changing, and it has a huge impact. But if we just stop thinking about all and get anxiety and get rid of the climate anxiety, this can be, everybody needs to look at their business model and see from a circular point of view, can we actually use less materials? Can we recycle more? Can we start leasing rather than selling or buying? So it's not that the solutions aren't there. it's nearly very basic down to a SWOT analysis. What are we weak in, i.e. what is really hindering us? How can we become strong at that? What are the opportunities to do so that we actually lift up we become resilient?
That's super interesting. And in the spirit of this demystification of CSRD, so I think I'm, let's assume I'm an organisation that does fall into the category of having to do this. Now, I've done my double materiality, so I've got my head around that. I've got my head around the fact the inside out and outside in view, so I know where we are. Now what do I do with that information?
Yeah, so again, once you know what is important to you, what is material to you, you want to make sure that you understand what you need to report against. So again, against those 12 standards, and we talk about climate change, we talk about pollution, we talk about water and the marines, we talk about biodiversity, your own workforce, the workforce in the value chain. We're talking about your consumers and your end users, and we're talking about affected communities, and then the business conduct. So those 10 different lenses, we need to report how we as an organization have either policies relating to that, how we have developed action plans, what our targets are to improve, and how we measure ourselves to improve.
Okay, so each of those things you mentioned there, they're defined as things that need to happen. So target, it's interesting, and actions mentioned there, because a lot of the stuff before has always been we should report on it.
It's
but
fluffy.
It's fluffy, yeah.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that this legislation's moving action to the front and centre of what we're talking about.
Completely. And so the first thing you need to do is develop your own gap analysis. Like, what do we need to report on? What do we currently have? And what a lot of organizations forget is there's already a lot happening in their business. It's not that you start from zero. Everybody's already on the journey. And some people, some companies, for example, they have been signed up already to so many different standards. They already have collected or already reporting on so many different elements. So first, do your gap analysis. Gather your policies, as I say, your policies, your procedures. Gather your action plans, how you engage with customers or suppliers. Gather all of that together, and you might have 80% already in your business.
And that's interesting. So if I'm already doing work and reporting against the Global Reporting Initiative or TCFD or whatever it might be, I might have already done a lot of this work already.
Absolutely. So please don't waste your time in starting afresh. Like, if in a very simplistic way, people might say that the CSRD is nearly the same as, or is an extended and enhanced combination of the GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative, and the TCFD, which is what's your strategy? What's your governance? Show me your metrics and your target. What's your risk management like? What it does do, why I like it, and again, it's a legal text. It's hard to read, but what I like about it, it gives everybody a standardized approach to look at the complex problems that ESG is, like the environment. What are our challenges? What are our social challenges? What are our governance challenges? So Europe has actually developed this standardized approach. And if we think about the 10 ESRSs, so not the mandatory one, but the ones that are going to be decided if you need to report on, it is exactly that. It's what are my policies in relation to these things that fall under, for example, water and marine resources. What are my procedures? What are my processes? What's my action plan? Where am I now, and how am I going to improve against what target? So if I have a target by 2030 to reduce 50% of my water consumption or water discharge, what are my targets and how am I going to measure? And that's like, a lot of companies already have that in place.
And what I presume it's doing is providing a way that you can then directly compare companies, so that company's reporting in the same way that company's reporting is, so it's a level playing field.
Again, think back at the first thing that I said, it's about eliminating greenwashing. Transparency is disclosure, and disclosure is transparency. And the EU has develop this structure that everybody can compare themselves against everybody. It needs that we all need to be measured at the same level, because guess what? We all have the same target. Our target is we need to be either net zero by 2050. We need to, reduce our carbon by 55% by 2030, and others. So Europe has targets as a geography they have their targets in the EU Green Deal. Every country has targets, so therefore every company should have targets.
So I'm interested then. So it's clearly EU legislation, and there are companies that we deal with that would be in the US or the UK. How are other companies that maybe not in that jurisdiction, how do they get impacted by this?
So there's also non-EU companies who need to report into this once they fall within a threshold of above, I think also 150 million. But it's actually, for me, the broader question that you bring up, Ben, is that even if you're an SME, right, even if you're outside of Europe, but you trade or you sell into or you're buying from an organization that is compliant to CSRD, why would it matter to me? Why is that important to me? It's not a sting in the tail, but the enhanced scope that the CSRD is bringing is that you as an organization not only are responsible or accountable for the things you do in your organization, you also need to report on all these requirements, all these disclosures from your suppliers and to your customers. So they're actually extending that scope from we have to collaborate. You need to know where you're buying, and again, I come from the supply chain side and the procurement side. We did, value chain mapping, as a given, but a lot of organizations, do they know where the raw material of a product is coming from? Do they know if there's any modern slavery attached to any of their sourced material? Do companies go as far back? And if they didn't, well, they have to now. So the EU is saying, flatten it all out, show us, so make it visible.
So the EU is effectively saying it's not good enough to push that problem somewhere else. You have to own your problem.
We now are being called on to be responsible and accountable for our own actions, how they impact the growth, sustainable growth of our business, but also the environment and the people we impact. So it's an extended scope.
It's fascinating, and I can really see a couple of things here. One is how powerful it's going to be if it's implemented in the right way, but also to how challenging that's going to be for organisations really just to get their minds around it. Although by the sounds of things, also an opportunity. So if you were to advise an organisation on some of the key things that they can do today and they need to have in mind to be able to be successful in this environment, what might they be?
Well, there's definitely, so the disclosures, when we go into the detail, the disclosures come down to two things. One is data, the numbers, the values, which is hard to get, and we always have the problem of quality of data, accuracy of data, streamlining data. So that's still a problem. But also the text, the explanation, the policies and procedures. So when we look at what we need to disclose, on the one hand, it's 20-30% is data driven, and the other hand is text and evidence of policies and behaviors. Yeah. So again, do your analysis, know what you need to report on, and then see what data you need. So develop a data strategy.
Data, okay.
Yeah, so make sure that you know the sources of data that you need to collect it. Know how to make sure that it's accurate, that it's frequently updated, uploaded, that the people who are doing it know how important accuracy is. So it's all about trying to link up. Again, we're talking about the chain here, linking up the data from the first supplier to the last customer. And that's important. And again, like online platforms, there's plenty of good platforms out there who demystify, who help, who make it simpler, who make it easier for companies to focus on what they need to do. And from a data point of view, once you configure what you need, what data you need, what text you need to comply with the disclosures, then it's about the doing, and then it's about the improving, and that's again more important. Final thing on the reporting. Reporting should be an outcome of your actions and your improvement. We shouldn't be reporting just for the sake of reporting.
I think that's super important. A lot of what I come across as being reporting is the first thing people look at, as if it's the important thing, but it's not. Important thing is just an outcome at the end. And just on the data, it seems kind of interesting that it touches so many people in the organisation. It's no longer sustainability over here producing a report at the end of the year. It has to be embedded within an organisation, and to that point, it has to be updated. It's a little bit like if you were trying to manage your business with an annual report.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know the impact of your decisions when you're making them until the following year.
Completely.
So you kind of need at least granular enough data that when you make a decision to do something, you can see the impact in enough of a short feedback loop to know that it's working and that you can double down on that or change that. Seems like an important thing.
Absolutely. And again, one of the key elements or components of the CSRD is that now you need to incorporate your sustainability statement and your financial statement. And so they need to be aligned. You can't say anymore, we sign up to the Science-Based Target Initiative, and we have our 55% to target emission reduction by 2030, while you're still investing in oil and fuel, and you're trying to get away with the carbon credits or offsetting or all of that. Now it needs to, once you put your money somewhere, you now need to also evidence that you're not significantly harming the environment or social, or it needs to be aligned. So that integration of where we put our finances, how we're growing our business, with not harming or actually contributing to the environment and people is one of the other core elements in the CSRD, and that needs to be then externally assured. So it's not, again, good enough to say, here we did all of this, we did great work. Here is our beautiful brochure or annual report, but it now needs to be externally assured.
So in a similar way that the senior leaders of organisations are held accountable for their financial reporting, they're now going to be held accountable for sustainability reporting in a similar way.
Yeah.
And presumably then the natural implication of that is that across the C-suite, people are going to have to take this as seriously as any other disclosure.
It's a business problem, and therefore it needs to become a business solution. And on the one hand, yes, it is complex and we need to, unravel it, and it needs to be simplified. But it's such a huge opportunity as well to look at your business model and saying, okay, what are the core, what are we about, and how can we actually embed sustainability into our business model? Because ultimately, that's what we need to do. There's already different scenarios that can be run, that at the end you can reach the emission reduction target. You can reduce your water against the target. So running these scenarios need to be at the business model. But ultimately, then it's about the people who need to do this. Like you said, it needs to come top down, also bottom up, and we meet in the middle around a structure that, companies can start comparing their ESG-ness from a CSRD point of view.
That's very interesting. Thanks, Ingrid. I'm very conscious we're getting near to the end of the time, and actually we could We could talk all day about demystifying CSRD. I think in summary, it feels to me this is very much a business problem at its core. It's about taking advantage of a big opportunity, and shouldn't be felt like it's a sustainability problem over there. It's really core to what everybody should be doing. And to be fair, a lot of people are, but we just want to encourage more people to engage on that.
And again, if I can say anything for the young people, for people who are on their journey of living, make sure that sustainability is part of your learning, your capacity building, because we need all the hands we can get.
Thank you. And if anybody wants to know more about this, please contact Cool Planner.
Thank you.